To
Right on cue.
Michelle. I'll turn the floor over to you.
Hi, thank you so much, Amanda, for that introduction. And thank you, Lenore and Dave, for joining us today. As Amanda
Thank
mentioned,
you.
this is our annual look back episode of My Next Question, where we talk about the year gone by. So we were joking before we started today that, there's not really anything that happened this year. There's not much to talk about. There were no tariffs and the gold price was completely stable. So, I think we can just wrap it up right here. What do you think?
Sure.
Yeah, sounds
Yeah,
good.
it's been a quiet year.
So I want to ask you each from your vantage point to talk about what would you say from your kind of beat, your perspective on the industry, what would you say was the biggest news of this year? And Dave, I'm going to start with you on this one.
Okay, thanks, Michelle, and thanks, Amanda, and hello, Lenore.
Hello.
So obviously, all kidding aside, not a dull moment this year in the jewelry industry, and I think the way I'd kind of say it is, it's like a perfect storm. Yes, tariffs, gold, the continuation of this Ukraine-Russian conflict and war. And then you throw lab grown into it. This is a perfect storm. And it's been a lot of challenges that were thrown at the jewelry industry. It's and coming down the stretch, we're waiting to see how we're going to end up, but all indicators are pretty good. So I think the biggest surprise, the biggest news is that we're trending really well heading into the end of the year. So I'd kind of sum it up that way.
Okay. Not a bad summary. Lenore, what are your thoughts? Biggest news this year. And Lenore is our senior editor with National Jeweler. And for anyone that's not aware, she covers the retail end of the business for us. So,
Yes, so certainly from a retail perspective, tariffs were obviously the biggest news this year. Everyone was trying to figure out, what this all meant, what was going to happen next. There was a lot of uncertainty. So for me as a retail reporter, I got the perspective of seeing it from the retailer and also from the consumer. So it was interesting for me to see how both of those groups responded, who was raising prices, who was trying not to do that, who was offering more accessibly priced items to kind of meet consumers where they were. And then on the consumer side, seeing like how did their spending habits change or did they not change at all? I think the tariff situation sort of made its way into everything this year. So that was the biggest news on my beat this year for sure.
yeah, the tariffs. Amanda?
Um, I obviously echo Lenore and Dave's that tariffs has sort of been the number one most polarizing part of our industry this year. Obviously, gold prices is right up there. And as someone who takes calls from reporters on a daily basis, gold prices was the top of my list of the phone calls that I got the most from the media. I would say two other big stories that I think are less serious, but certainly got the industry talking. And the Louvre heist was certainly one of them because jewelry wasn't.
Oh, of
So
course.
that was
Yeah.
an interesting story for a lot of reasons. Obviously, like security is always top of mind for our industry, and to have the industry sort of say, "Wait, how could this have gone so wrong?" Um,
How did you just roll up to the Louvre with a ladder and
you
climb
know,
into the jewelry gallery?
And I was particularly interested in the Napoleon jewels, and I mean the impact on my own family.
yes, those heirlooms, the
Yes.
Bonaparte heirlooms. And of course, the one story that broke the internet was Taylor Swift's engagement, and her engagement
Oh,
ring was certainly another less serious, but certainly widely talked about story for
oh yeah.
2025.
Yeah, I mean that was obviously like she's a very public figure, she's very popular, and anything she does makes news. But for the jewelry industry, that was big news. And I've said this before and I'll say it again. The jewelry industry was very lucky that she chose a natural diamond, but that's something we can discuss more in depth later.
Right.
For me, when I was preparing for this, of course, the first two things that jumped to my mind were gold prices, tariffs. I knew someone else was going to say that. So I was trying to think about other things to talk about. And what came to mind for me, and Lenore is familiar with this, is all the independent jewelers that opened up big, new, beautiful stores this year. We just wrote about Days Jewelers' ninth store. I'm thinking about Corman, their new store in Austin, Zadok Jewelers opening in Austin, and then J.R. Dunn in Florida expanded their flagship, and also John Carter, Jack Lewis Jewelers in
Yes.
Illinois. Like I
Big
was talking
store.
to someone
Yeah.
that the other day that was saying that he said that was the most beautiful store he's ever seen.
Yeah,
So
and then early in the year, CD Peacock,
CD Peacock,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
Amanda and I went to that store.
right? Yeah, it's
So
amazing.
yeah, and just thinking it's interesting to see there were so many and family-owned independents too,
Yeah.
or in Days Jewelers case, employee-owned, opening these big, beautiful stores this year. And
Yeah,
I thought that was kind of like an interesting through line. Like it's not one story or one piece of news, but kind of a trend, if you will. And then Amanda mentioned obviously already Taylor Swift, but I was thinking we had a few engagements this year that I think really brought diamonds in the limelight and different diamond shapes. And I was thinking specifically about Taylor's friend Selena Gomez, who got a marquee cut, and Lenore's a marquee cut fan. She got a
I
marquee
am.
cut from Benny Blanco, her now husband. And we had a lot of jewelers tell us, obviously, like the Taylor effect, we know that's had a big effect. But before Taylor got engaged and when Selena got engaged, I had a couple jewelers say that they were having more interest in marquee cuts because of her. So I think it's interesting. I think sometimes we might like dismiss celebrity engagements out of hand, like, oh, that's just like gossip or whatever. But, with social media, especially today, a lot of people see these rings. And even if they like the celebrity or not, is often not even, doesn't even
yeah.
matter. They're just like,
Yeah.
oh, like Hailey Bieber, whoever, like I saw her wearing this or wearing that. And it really influences what they like and what they're looking for.
Well,
So
if you
I,
remember at that time of the Taylor Swift engagement, that was at the time its peak in lab grown disruption, right? Lab grown still is very active, but to your point, Michelle, really opened the eyes of those looking for natural diamonds, and I think was a boost for that part of the industry.
right.
Sure.
So yeah, and she's kind of, we wrote about it. We wrote that she was kind of like adding fuel to a trend that was already going, which is for antique or vintage looking, not necessarily truly antique diamond
Yeah,
cuts. So
and
that was,
your comment on independent stores and the new stores coming out from independents. It's interesting because you see the sales, and this is probably through August, September. The industry was trending about 1% up at that time. It's a little bit more now, but of that 1%, 7% was independent retailers. So, and that category led the way in terms of sales. It increased year over year. That includes big box, online. Online's kind of stalled. It's still there, but it's not increasing as everybody thought it would. So, just to comment on your earlier point about
no,
independence and growth.
I think that's a really good point, Dave. I
Mm.
want to ask this too. We talked about our news. Was there anything that's happened this year that like really surprised you, that you felt really came out of the blue and like you couldn't believe it?
Yeah, well, Liberation Day, right? The tariffs.
So, right.
That,
Liberation Day,
um,
for everyone who might not know, is the name that was given to the day that President Trump announced all the reciprocal
yeah,
tariffs. I think it was April 7th or something like
yeah.
that.
Right before that, there was a lot of rhetoric, a lot of discussion, and a lot of people didn't think that it was going to happen.
Hmm.
Um, and so the industry was very jumpy, especially those importing diamonds. I was getting phone calls daily about what's going to happen. Of course, I didn't have a crystal ball. I don't know. And then all of a sudden it happened. What I thought was really interesting, right after that, U.S. importers of diamonds, the increased imports in diamonds spiked because everybody was trying to get the goods in before the tariffs were in effect, and
Right.
it did stave off a price increase in diamonds,
Yeah.
and still is. And so the independent and big box were well stocked coming into this season. Now, once that inventory runs out, then we're going to have to see what's going to happen. But that was the biggest surprise. I mean, the industry's ability to react and pivot based on big news is fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think I will say that I was pleasantly surprised by the resiliency I've seen both in retailers and in consumers. I think this was a tough year for a lot of reasons, tariffs, gold prices, just a lot of bad, sad news. And I think that really weighs on people in a lot of ways. And while things could certainly be better, I feel like people have really made the best of the cards that they were dealt. And I mean, I wish we all had less to contend with, but it was encouraging to see people doing their best anyway.
Yeah, agreed.
I would say, Amanda, if you don't mind if I jump in.
Oh, go ahead.
My biggest surprise is that gold jewelry sales have maintained a level even in spite of the price of gold. And Amanda and I have
I
talked about
do
this all
mind if you
year.
steal my answers, however, Michelle.
Sorry.
No,
So
okay, we're on the same page.
Um, you just expect, I always think back to, and Amanda and I have talked about this before. I think back to the economic crisis. I just started at National Jeweler like 2007, 2008, 2009, when everybody fled to silver. Everybody lost their jobs, etc. Obviously, we're not in the same kind of economy, but the price of gold is way higher than it was in 2007, and people are still buying gold. I
Yeah,
mean, it's just incredible to me. It's just not dissuading people from buying gold jewelry. And we just did Pinterest put out at the end of every year puts out a trend report, kind of a forecast of trends for the coming year, if you will. And they're predicting bold gold, big bold gold, which is what we've seen now for a while, to continue to be popular. And it's just, I'm just amazed by it. And we do see some white metals creeping in, but I think it's partially reaction to the gold price, but I think it's partially also that we've been in a yellow gold wave for a while now, and people are just ready to mix it up a little bit. Because, we're seeing some platinum come in, which is great, and we're seeing some interest obviously in silver, but then white gold too is coming in, so that's not going to be any less expensive than yellow gold. So I
right.
look at the white metal trend as being more just like an aesthetic interest than a reaction to
Yeah,
the high price
fashion.
of gold.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But I just can't believe people still buying gold. Or maybe at this point, some people see it as an investment.
Yeah, I've been doing these media tours this week too, and just talking to, doing holiday gift ideas, and gold is at the top of the list. And that's what I say too, Michelle. It's, the higher the price gold prices go, the more almost desirable it becomes because gold is
right.
so different in that it's directly related to monetary value in people's minds because
It's tangible value. Yeah,
they see it and they recognize that there's value. And gold is special, and I think it makes people look at their heirloom pieces and their existing gold jewelry in a totally different way and want to get it out and wear
yeah,
it. And I
yeah.
and I agree
Or
with you.
have it refashioned into something more modern.
Mhm.
Or
Mhm.
have
Yeah,
it melted down so that they can buy a more modern looking piece.
Sure.
This is something I've been thinking about doing. That's why I
Mhm.
threw it in there.
Mhm.
I know I
Yeah,
do
I
have.
think you're exactly right, guys, in that as gold goes up and there's no indication that it's going to recede,
No.
all of the prognosticators on the business channels are saying gold could go to 5,000. So I think consumers they realize there's value there and they're willing to invest. Not that they're going to buy to sell. Rarely do people do that, but they are confident that it's going to hold its value. Um, and the activity among those holding older pieces of jewelry in gold and the activity in actually going to melt that for cash has been off the charts.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of activity around it. Gold, increasing gold prices, like we always use the word resilience. The industry finds a way to deal with it. And as you guys have read, and you're closer to the designers than I am, I've read a lot about how designers are making different types of pieces, lighter pieces. And they're still luxurious, but they're a little lighter, still
Yeah.
gold, but it's not going to cost as much as if you made it a little bit heavier. And those types of pivots. So I think it's everybody was really nervous that this gold surge was going to really hurt sales, but it's done the opposite.
Yeah, it's done the opposite. So interesting, isn't it?
Mhm.
Amanda, this next question's for you, and I won't jump in and steal your answer, I promise. What would you say were the three biggest jewelry trends of the year? We can narrow it down to three. And Dave and Lenore, if you have something to say, feel free to jump in too.
Sure.
Yeah, and I think we've already actually sort of hit on a lot of them, which is interesting because they've been such big stories, which isn't always the case. I feel like sometimes there's these silent trends that are happening that make a big part of our sales, but they aren't big flashy trends. But this year in particular, vintage jewelry and even antique cut stones Obviously, Taylor's engagement ring, going back to that Taylor effect, had something to do with it. But before that, even we were seeing this rise in sort of new vintage. So like vintage, people suddenly like taking on
Mhm.
new collections and carrying collections that are, estate pieces and giving them more retail coverage and giving them more space in their retail store. And, gold prices have something to do with that too. It's like secondhand being able to still be a little bit more affordable, perhaps, than some other pieces, especially if they're not signed. But that was a big trend in 2025, and I think
Mhm.
that's certainly something that's going to continue to carry on into 2026. Color, color, color is another. The color gemstones of all different varieties, not just our big
Yeah.
three. Just
Mhm.
a lot of different color, and particularly color gemstone earrings, really being super, popular right now because it's still beauty's in the eye of the beholder. So it's like being able to
Mhm.
go in and find something that's different, that's not a diamond and it's not,
Mhm.
um, just gold is interesting. And then lastly is, like you had already mentioned, Michelle, bold gold. It just continues.
Mhm.
And it
Yep.
was
Yeah.
amazing to me to see, these big bold styles. Like I have jewelry with me 'cause I'm
Oh
just
yeah.
built
Just
TV,
some
but
jewelry.
so like these are Lisa Nick and like they're massive and they're so beautiful. But Dave, they tie into what you were saying is that they're also really light. So like they are lightweight,
Right.
they're comfortable to wear, but they're also lightweight, so it keeps the price down. And um
Right.
this style is where it's at. So
Yeah. Mhm.
um big bold gold for sure.
Yeah.
Love Lisa and her designs.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think one other thing that I noticed early on when the tariffs were starting to be reality, everybody that all of our GAA members that sell antique and estate, they were like, thank God for antique and estate because they're crushing it, right? So
Yeah.
those that are very heavy in that sector did really well, and there were some others jumping in to take advantage of it. And then the secondary watch market, it was always steady, but it kind of it started to recede a little bit after those high spikes in COVID,
Yeah.
and then but it's kind of steadied out because there's a lot of watches here that pre tariff, pre 39% Swiss tariff.
Well,
So
that's I will jump in and note that the Swiss tariff is going down to 15%, I
right,
believe.
right, it's
But
not signed
I will
yet, but
say
yeah,
number one, that's still not nothing, but it's
right,
a lot better than 39%. But
yes,
you're right, Dave. Like
yeah, yep,
pre-owned is where it's at if you want to avoid currently
right,
high gold prices and tariffs. And I
mhm,
want to point out too something else from the Pinterest trends report is that Pinterest has noticed an uptick in searches for 80s style.
Hmm.
And, sorry to report, but 80s is vintage. So, and
kind of
It's
like this suit
that's
I'm
that
wearing.
look too, that big bold gold look. And it's we're not to the stage where it's antique yet, but it is vintage. So,
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
Yeah, trends are not my area per se. I will just throw my 2 cents in here. I think my favorite trend continues to be these designers who are making jewelry like really playful and fun. I
mm,
think maybe as a response to all of the maybe heavier things we might be dealing with, like Mind and Found had this play collection where they reimagined these like nostalgic toys like Jax, and then CCWW Designs did that snack jewelry that we had covered. It was like goldfish crackers and gummy bears. Harwell Godfrey's Pet Rock with the little googly eyes is adorable. So all those like really fun light pieces have been my favorite trend this year.
that entire 70s collection from Harwell Godfrey was incredible. Absolutely
Incredible.
incredible.
The quilt pieces, it was all gorgeous.
Yeah, but I think there's also something going on here, Lenore, that there's a general, I mean, just speaking more generally, nostalgia is a trend too. And it was mentioned again in the Pinterest trend report. And I think there's just a big, you know, it's like longing for kind of what never was in a way, right? Like reimagining that the past was perfect. But,
Right.
nostalgia is a little bit dangerous in that way. But I do see why people today would be yearning for simpler times, yearning for times when we weren't dealing with so much all the time. But yeah, I
Right.
think the play stuff and the snack jewelry all is playing into that nostalgia trend that we're seeing.
For sure.
So do you have a favorite story? Or we kind of talked about this a little bit right now, or jewelry collection from 2025, something that stood out to you?
Tell you're going to die at my answer. Are you ready?
Yes.
I think it
Is
is.
it a cat? Does it involve cats?
No, but I wish it was. Um, for everybody who does not know, Michelle's a little obsessed with her cat and loves all things cats.
Cat lady.
Fun fact for you today. Um, it's Lauren Harwell Godfrey's launch in Couture, her 70s collection. When you sent me this question, I don't know, I can't remember a time where a collection was more talked about following a launch at a trade show. And I felt
In a long time at
in
least.
a long time, right? Okay, so in a very long time, where I felt like once we came home and everybody that I talked to, especially in the press world, like and the retailer world, like is one collection that amazed you, and it was Lauren Harwell Godfrey's collection. And I think for a lot of reasons, one, it was the nostalgia thing, like we talked about. Lenore, she had the playful elements,
Yeah.
she had the retro elements with it being all 70s inspired. It was really fun. She had the disco balls. The disco ball,
The grandma squares.
she had her grandma squares. So there was a lot of nostalgia, but in a very high-end luxury world that Lauren does so beautifully. I felt like that collection and that moment really was, for me, the most talked about and the most memorable.
Interesting.
I loved Lauren's collection as well. I called it out already. I also want to say though that I love Zonzi's Beluga whale collection.
Oh, yeah.
Like, first of all, I love animals overall, though cats are my favorite, but I love animal jewelry, and I just thought I love Zonzi's style. I love those rings, and I just thought, a beluga whale is not an animal I don't think I've ever seen represented in jewelry, but it wasn't quite so literal, and I really love that collection. There might be other ones that I'm forgetting, but that's what immediately came to mind for me when I wrote this question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have necessarily a designer or jewelry story that is a favorite, but I always go back to the industry's continued and consistent celebration. And I'll plug Gem Awards, right? That's always my favorite story of the year because it happens right out of the gate. And we celebrate the best of the best by category. And the industry continues to have a thirst for Gem Awards and other events out there to celebrate the industry's best of the best, and it that helps propel, excitement, innovation. People get thinking. You got consumer magazines and editorial. Just the fuel, I think, behind all of your stories about these types of designers. It's the industry's desire to celebrate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I'm really looking forward to that this year.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll give a favorite story rather than a favorite collection. My favorite story this year was I covered the Claire's bankruptcy saga. So Claire's was my first intro to jewelry. I'm sure that's true of a lot of people.
Yep.
So when I heard they were filing for bankruptcy, I was very sad. I'm a big fan of Claire's. They were looking for a buyer. Their future was uncertain. They had stores that were closing. Speaking of nostalgia, I saw so many videos on TikTok and other social media feeds about like, oh no, Claire's is closing, like how sad people were. And then lo and behold, they did find a buyer and they were able to keep a lot of their stores open. And I mean, I have some thoughts about what happens when private equity gets involved with brands people really love, but I was really happy to see Claire's get a second chance and to see that, other people also saw value in like what Claire's offers for like younger consumers, especially little girls. So that was my feel good story of the year. I was very excited to see that Claire's had been saved.
Oh, that's a great one.
No,
Yeah.
Very
that's a
good.
really good one.
Very
Um,
good.
so does anybody have a favorite memory from an event, whether it was Gem Awards or a trade show like Las Vegas? I mean, there was a lot going on in the trade show space this year.
Yeah, I'll start off by saying it's with the amount of geopolitical activity and the macroeconomic effect, and especially with the tariffs, it kept JA busy from a government relations standpoint. So, we found ourselves down there much more this year, maybe triple the amount of time talking about tariffs with senior leaders of the administration. So my one great memory that I have is, in addition to all the lobbying we've done on behalf of the jewelry industry for diamonds and for just jewelry in general and for retailers and suppliers, meeting with the mastermind behind the tariffs and Peter Navarro, and the positive effect after we explained the supply chain dynamics, and he got it, and it made an effect, and we had a great dialogue, and they listened, and they continued to listen to us, and I think we're making a positive effect. Hopefully, it's not as fast as we'd like it to be, but hopefully we find that bottom again. And it's through those things. I think it's, you watch TV and you watch government and what's going on, and nobody can agree on anything. But when you actually go down there and speak to these individuals, they actually do care about real life things. I think media tends to sensationalize a lot of things. And this was a really down to earth discussion about business and the fact that government understands it and they explained their process. It was encouraging. So that was my memory, that hopefully we get more and more of those stories and make more progress.
Well, Dave, I think thank you for sharing that. I think you make two great points. Number one, if you don't like the way things are going, you need to speak up and do something
Yeah.
about it. If you don't
Some
like
people,
the
you're
local
right, Michelle.
officials in your town, you need to vote. If you don't like what's going on with your
Yeah.
congressman, you need to say
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, I agree.
And even if you think, oh, all politicians are the same,
Mhm.
whatever, nothing's going to happen, doesn't hurt anything to try and to speak.
Right. Yeah,
Number
good
one,
point.
and number two, I would point out that and thanks to your lobbying efforts and the lobbying efforts of other organizations in the trade, we did have diamonds and a long list of colored gemstones that were added to the potential exemption list. Now,
Yep.
those exemptions don't happen until the U.S. signs a trade deal with that
Right.
country, diamonds, for example, but we have to
Mhm.
sign a finalized trade deal with India. And then I think there has to be one step beyond it for that list to
Yes.
begin.
It's got to be
But at
signed.
least
It's got to be
it's
reciprocal.
right. At least it's being considered, right?
Well,
Whereas
there's
if we had stood back and said nothing and just said, oh,
right.
we can't do anything, nothing's going to change, we would
Yeah.
never have gotten even those possible exemptions.
Well, right, because you think about it, oil is always on the top of the totem pole, right? That's what they're talking about here. Oil drives everything. And so we're not that high up on the totem pole. So it was critical for us to go there and explain this to them. But it's interesting
Because
as it happened.
even though
Yeah,
we're in the middle of it, relatively speaking, fine jewelry is a
yeah,
small industry.
yes. But the interesting thing that's happening is, while these reciprocal trade deals happen, and we do have positive effects with diamonds on the Annex 3 list, for instance, and colored gemstones, hopefully cultured pearls in the future. Um, what's been happening? If you speak to manufacturers of equipment and tools that make jewelry, there has been a surge. I'm not saying it's a boom, but it's significant, where manufacturers coming back to the United States for jewelry, finished jewelry. And so the amount of sales that some of these guys are selling equipment and tools and technology to manufacturers in, say, on 47th Street and up in Providence has spiked. So that's an interesting byproduct of this. And once that happens, it's not going to just go away again. It's going to stay. So, and I'm talking mostly, higher end,
Yeah.
bigger price point pieces, one of a kind stuff, not mass produced stuff.
Yeah. We're still going to need to depend on India and other
100%. Yeah,
countries,
100%. But I
especially
thought
for
that was an
like
interesting anecdote.
some very specific cutting.
I
Yeah,
was just going to
yeah,
say
agreed.
the training and the
Yeah,
workforce behind the transition is quite hard, possibly the hardest part of the whole thing.
yeah, it's a challenge right now. You're absolutely right, 100%.
And then
It's
you're going to
very
run into the
challenging.
same issue with price as you do with the tariffs, right?
Mhm.
Because
Yep,
then you're going to have to pay people more to do the work and it's going to
yep,
end up costing more anyway.
you're absolutely right. But there is this kind of change happening. I'm not saying it's going to be a tidal wave, but it is interesting to watch it.
I have two favorite stories, Michelle, from the year, or memories, really. One is from Gem Awards in March. Jeff Firo introducing John Green
Yeah,
for the Lifetime Achievement Award, and John Green's acceptance speech. Together, those two will be all-time
yeah,
best
amazing.
presentation and acceptance. The perfect mix of funny and humble and just really capturing the spirit of John, really,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
having, forget to mention his kid, one of his
I
sons,
was gonna say,
his business, and then calling him back up on stage, coming back up on stage to because he remembered, like, it was just all like just so I mean, Charlie won't say it's perfect because he was the one that, we still tease him, but um it it was perfect because it just shows like how you when you get into those moments. But definitely one of my all-time favorite Jem Ward's moments were those two speeches. And then also in Vegas, we do our member meetups. And this year we honored our 20 under 40, our current class of our 20 under 40. And just to have so many incredible, youngish minds in the room and to be able to celebrate them in that way is just really special. And it's also fun to see our members come together and have cocktails. And a couple had a couple too many cocktails, but what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. So I won't fill you in on the rest of that story.
Yeah,
Good stuff.
I'll give you a favorite event, Michelle. You were actually there with me. Michelle and I went to Converge in Carlsbad in September for their inaugural event. It's sort of a mix of AGS Conclave and then the GIA Symposium. That was my favorite work event of the year. It was my first time in Carlsbad. It's absolutely beautiful. Beautiful backdrop, just really good energy of all the people who were there. They had a section that was like the equivalent of a science fair where you walked around and you looked at people's posters and you heard about all the research that they're doing. It was super interesting. So that was my favorite event of the year.
Yeah, it was a good one.
What about when the three of us went to see Roberto Coin's new launch and we got
Oh,
oh, with
and we
Dakota
see
Johnson.
we got to
that
see
was a
Dakota
fun one.
Johnson.
Yeah, that was a fun one. That was
Wait,
a
where
good
was
one.
I for that one? I didn't get the
You
invite.
you did get the invite. You sent us instead.
Yeah. Um,
Um,
I was trying to think if I went to two new things this year, new places for me. I was with Lenore and Converge. That I also really enjoyed Converge once I figured out how to walk from one building to the other and what was in each building, which took a little bit.
Needed
Took
your
Um,
days.
walking shoes for sure.
Yeah, and then I would also say I went to the JA Jewelers Learning Workshop in Oklahoma City with the Oklahoma Jewelers Association, and my JA colleague Molly and I went on a tour of the BC Clark store there, and it was amazing. It's a beautiful store. We had a lovely afternoon there, and it was wonderful. And speaking of, I mean, that store did not open this year, but speaking of independence with big, beautiful stores. And the whole second floor of BC Clark is all giftware. Like everybody's up there picking out China patterns, and they had all these Halloween decorations because we went in October. And just like I like little home tchotchke stuff that I really like, but don't really have room for, but I like to admire. And it was just, I love the way they did it too, because they had all the China patterns displayed, and then you put your name on, and it would said like John and Michelle, October 2026 or whatever, like the people who had picked it and the date they were getting married. And I really like that.
hmm,
I just really enjoyed that store, and I had never been to Oklahoma City or Oklahoma before. So that was a good one for
good
me.
stuff.
It was a
It's
new one.
great.
Yeah, that's a beautiful store. I was there when they had Conclave in Oklahoma City. It's really
Yeah.
lovely.
Yeah. It's a really nice store. Um, so one last question before we move on to 2026 predictions. Summarize 2025 in one word.
Well,
Oof.
I've already said it. I think Lenore said it. Mine's resilient. The
Mm,
industry is resilient. Always is. I mean, we've all been in this business a long time. Me since 1997, and there's always something going on, but the industry meanders and gets through it and figures it out. And I'm very confident that the industry will continue to do that, even with all that's going on with diamond prices and supply and tariffs and lab grown and gold price. I mean, we're going to be over. I think Bain's predicting a 4% increase year over year in these turbulent times. So that's
yeah.
fascinating to me.
I think the thing is people still want to celebrate. And that's what
Yep.
jewelry mostly is bought for, like celebrating yourself, celebrating a promotion, celebrating a
Yep.
relationship.
Agreed. That's the difference.
My word
Yeah.
would be unpredictable. I
Mhm.
felt like it was very unpredictable. Every day was like, oh, all right, we've got all this, Michelle, we talk about all the time, like tariffs, we've got to figure it out. And then
Yeah.
literally 30 seconds later, it's like, oh, no, that's changed. So it's like everything was a little bit unpredictable this year. It's like gold is going up, but people are still buying. So that was a little unpredictable. It was outside of our normal flow of how we see things operate, but not certainly not unpredictable in a bad way. And I definitely think the resilience was there because of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you said it right at the start, Michelle. This year was eventful. That would be my one word. I feel like we hit the ground running in January and we have not stopped since. Between tariffs and gold prices and celebrity engagements and those really big auctions, we had a lot of crime stories, unfortunately, particularly the Louvre heist. I mean, we say
People
jewelry never
swallowing
sleeps,
jewelry.
but people swallowing jewelry,
Again,
two separate, different
unpredictable.
stories.
That's,
Unpredictable for sure. Yeah, this year was just a whirlwind, but we were almost made it through.
Yeah, we almost waited through. I
yep.
always have to laugh when I see on Instagram Reels, they always post those memes of like people kind of dragging themselves along and they're like me trying to get through the rest of December. And I kind of feel that way this year.
Well, I saw one that was like December challenge, get through December.
I'm
For
running on
me,
caffeine and anxiety.
For me, I think I would just pick the word wild because it was a wild ride. It
Yeah.
was up, it was down, things were on, they were off. When there was a crime happening, it was crazy crimes. Like, I did an interview with Scott Guginski from JSA earlier this year talking about all the people in California that were dealing with people driving cars into the stores. And he told me, he's like, I've been doing this for 20, 30 years and I've
Yeah.
never seen anything like it. So everything was just wild. It felt like everything was just like turned up a little bit. Like stuff that would normally happen had just a little extra twist to it that made it like unpredictable, crazy, and eventful. All of those
Yeah.
things.
Good one.
Um, what do you have any predictions for 2026? I know, Amanda, we got some questions beforehand. A lot of people want to know what's going to happen in 2026. I have just no idea. I mean,
Yeah.
I'll just say that
I'm
off
with
the
you.
bat. Like, if you had tried to think back at the beginning of 2025, and I know we did a webinar, I'd have to go back and look at it. I did not foresee any of this. Gold, what is it now? 4,200, 4,300. Didn't see that coming.
Yeah.
Silver, $63 an ounce.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was going to be
Crazy.
one of the other things that was like the fact that silver was, the refineries were full because people were trying to recycle all of this silver. It's like,
Yeah.
All that silver they bought during the
Well,
recession.
gold and silver, and that's a story in itself. And they can't refine it fast enough.
Right.
And the backlog is just for you talk to refiners right now for multiple reasons, but the backlog of refining gold right now is very difficult,
Yeah.
and because of the price.
I,
But predictions, gee, you're right, Michelle. It's based on what's happened in the last year and a half, it's going to be really hard to predict with any accuracy what's going to happen. So people shouldn't try. But I mean, my one observation is if the tariffs remain, I think you'll start to see prices go up a little bit because inventories at the lower price points are running out. I think you'll see Switzerland seems to be fixed, so that a lot of people are predicting fine Swiss watches going up if that tariff was going to stay at 39%, but that's been worked out. And some brands have actually already implemented price increases in that world. But I think I mean everybody thinks gold's going to continue to kind of inch up, maybe not as fast as it has, but a lot of this has to do with the macroeconomic geopolitical, what's going to happen in this Ukraine-Russia war. I mean, if that changes, that's going to have a dramatic effect on a lot of different things, supply
Yeah.
chain and a whole bunch of stuff. So tough to predict all this stuff, but I do see you mentioned it earlier, yellow gold was dominating in 2025, 24, 25, and I think we're seeing that white gold trend coming back. That when I talk to manufacturers, they say, yeah, everybody wants white gold again. So that's one minor thing that I'll throw out
Yeah.
there that I've been
And
hearing.
that's
just for the record, I already have my cool down story for Style File for January already slated before this conversation. So just so you guys.
Ah,
okay.
all right.
Perfect. Perfect.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah, I think, Dave, and to cap on what you said about the white gold thing, I think that's as much as a style choice as it is a price choice or
Yeah,
anything else. I
right.
think, people just, we've been wearing yellow now for a long time. I think eventually people get tired of looking at it. And then, something that was once old looks new again. Because when yellow
Yeah,
gold started to come in vogue in what, like 2013, 14, maybe? Yellow gold was considered like 80s and dated looking. And then, now it's all everybody wears. And then we ride that trend for a while. And then something cycles back in that looks new again.
Yeah.
right.
I think one of my predictions, Michelle, for 2026, which might be not what other people will agree with me. Hopefully they will, but the natural diamond engagement rings really being the go-to even for the younger generation. I think now with lab grown prices falling the way that they have, and we've been on this really large carat weight for these very young couples who are getting engaged to have them, the norm is like a 3 carat now.
Yeah,
Think there's a sense of, oh, that she has a really big engagement ring, so that must be lab grown. And now to see that smaller stone actually being a good thing because it means that it's natural is going to be interesting to see that how that shapes 2026.
yeah,
And I do think that we will see this, this drive from consumers, from customers for natural.
Yeah, I
yeah.
know that's really
Agree with
interesting.
that.
Amanda, any thoughts on whether De Beers Desert Diamonds initiative, the Beacon program, is gonna have any effect?
I think that the color, because it's about color and the fact that color um, and warm color stones, color in general is so popular. I think there is going to be a lot of momentum. Obviously, they're investing a lot in
Hmm.
the campaign, and they're investing a lot in getting collaborations. And that was going to be the other thing that I was going to say for 2026, Michelle, for my predictions is an increase in collaborations across sectors. So I think that's continued push to get designers to promote directly to consumers. The Desert Diamonds is good, and I think anything that's storytelling is important, and the industry needs good stories to tell. And so I think there will be definitely some momentum behind it for those reasons. The colors can be a tough sell, and it's going to take a lot of education from on the consumer part to get them to embrace that warmer palette. But I personally think they're beautiful. So it'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out, Michelle.
Okay, thank you. I also really love the Desert Diamonds. And I agree, like education is going to be key, but I think they do have working in their favor is the interest in antique and estate because those diamonds do tend to be warmer hued. It was mentioned when this whole promotion of Desert Diamonds came about that Taylor's ring had a bit of a yellow tint to it, and we've seen that. We've seen that with other celebrity engagements rings. So I think people too kind of understand that if they're going for something antique, they're not necessarily going to get pure white. And that could also shift their perspective a little on, oh, well, I didn't know diamonds could be cognac or light yellow or light brown. Like I like these too, these newer diamonds, these
Yeah.
newer looks. And I attended the Desert Diamonds launch in New York City. I thought De Beers got the best designers, and I thought all the designs were spectacular. I don't know if anybody saw Jules Kim, her brand is called Bejewels. Her Desert Diamond nails were incredible. I love them. And I also want to
I was
say,
gonna say too.
De Beers knows what it's doing when it comes to marketing, and I was watching, speaking of Taylor Swift, her I'm sure everybody heard her documentary about her Eras tour, and the final concert dropped on Disney Plus over the weekend. I was watching the documentary, and lo and behold, the first commercial I saw was Desert Diamonds. So like if you're going to drop it somewhere, that's a really smart place to drop it, because I'm sure that documentary got millions of viewers, and I'm sure those viewers are right in the demographic De Beers is trying to hit.
Yeah.
I'm going to make one prediction real quick for 2026. I think something that's been building for years, but we started to really see in 2025 was this bifurcation of the market where the rich get richer and people in the middle and lower income people struggle more because of high grocery prices, the tariffs, etc. And in the last time we were on an earnings call with Signet, Lenore was listened to the call. It was their third quarter results. This was just a couple weeks ago.
Yep.
And the CEO mentioned this specifically, that because of the government shutdown, because of the cut to SNAP benefits, because of higher prices, et cetera, that affected their customers in the third quarter. And I
Yeah.
think the jewelers you see doing well are the jewelers that are in areas, wealthier,
Right.
bigger urban areas. And these are the jewelers, for the most part, opening up the big new fancy stores. And I think we're going
Right.
to continue to see this bifurcation in the market. It's not just the jewelry market, it's across the market, but it's going to affect jewelry. It's across the economy in
Yeah.
2026. And there's going to be more
Yeah.
discussion around like
Yep.
growing divide between, if for no other better term, the have and the have-nots.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Michelle. That kind of plays into what my prediction is, my broad prediction for the year ahead. I think retailers are going to have to be really innovative to keep customers interested, especially for customers whose budgets are shrinking. I mean, regardless of who the customer is, you have some competition, whether it's with other luxury items or it's that they're spending on necessities and they have less to spend on discretionary things. I think, like you said, those who are very wealthy, they have not seen that much change. They're going to continue to spend comfortably, and they're going to have retailers that are going to be able to accommodate them, and that's great. I think those who are struggling will continue to do so, perhaps even more so. It's really what you were saying, that middle of the road customer that is of concern to me, the person who's coming in to spend, I don't know, $500 to $2,000 in your store. I think for that customer, the demand is there. Perhaps the budget is not matching up. So I think you're going to see, similar to what Signet is doing, like you had mentioned, some retailers are going to be offering some more lower price point items if they're able to, or maybe some designers working with more cost-effective materials, silver or maybe some underappreciated colored gemstones that still give a lot of color, that still give a big look. So I think people are going to have to think up innovative ways to hold on to their customers, and I'm excited to see what they come up with.
Yes. And before we move on to questions, any any thoughts on the Pantone's color of the year? White.
Somebody actually in the question field had a question
Had a
regarding
question about the color of the year. All right, let's move on to the Q&A and we'll get to that there then. Lenora, Dave, Amanda, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been a really great discussion. I hope our audience got a lot out of it. We have about 10 minutes left, so I'm going to hand it over to Amanda. I know we have questions come in while we were talking, and we had some submitted ahead of time.
Yeah, absolutely. If you do continue to have questions, put them in the Q&A. We'll get to as many of them as we possibly can. So my first question that came in prior to today's webinar was, what are the future expectations on silver and gold prices? I know we talked about this a little bit. And what are the future expectations for the effects of the tariffs? So Dave, do you want to kick it off? But I think
I think we're going to start to see, even though I think I'll take the second part first on the tariffs. It's kind of, in my view of watching this closely, it's stalled a little bit because there's other things that are distracting government at the moment. Obviously, trade negotiations are still going on. There are certain countries that they're not negotiating with, like some African producing countries, South Africa. There's no discussions with South Africa right now for other political reasons. But I think we'll start to see reciprocal trade deals from more countries. Obviously, the big one is India. We need India. We need Switzerland to come in, and then several others. Certainly, the gemstone producing countries that are mining gemstones, like Madagascar, others. And then I know that AGTA has been working with trade representatives from Thailand. We need to get this the China tariff situation worked out because of culture pearls. 90% of culture pearls coming from China. There's no way around that. So I'm hopeful that trade negotiations will increase again and get come to the forefront for us, and we get other items put on the Annex 3 list. And then when that trade negotiation is completed, then we'll be in the clear with those particular products from those countries. You have seen a lot of activity go to Antwerp now because of the EU. They struck a deal with the EU, And so that's been positive for Antwerp diamond cutters and stuff coming into the United States. As far as gold and silver, we talked about it earlier. I think nobody has a crystal ball, but I think it's not going to go any much lower. I think it's slowly ticking up.
And I
I don't
think you
think it's going
mentioned
to.
earlier that there were, and I've read this too, that some analysts are saying 5,000 for gold. And just as a
Yeah,
side note, whatever direction gold goes, silver shadows it. So if gold's
yeah,
going up, silver's
right.
going up.
Yeah,
Not,
Jamie
I mean, they're
Dimon said.
nowhere near each other in price, but they're going in the same direction.
Yeah, Jamie Dimon, JP Morgan said 5,000 gold by the end of next year. Who knows whether or not it's going to happen? But I think most people are thinking that gold's going to increase going into 26. So interesting thing is platinum is staying relatively low compared, like less than half. Um, but you don't see a great increase in platinum production in jewelry. I think because on a commercial scale, it's more scarce and rare, and you're not going to see it in the mass. Um, but I would have expected to see more platinum engagement rings and that type of jewelry manufactured, but I simply haven't seen it. So
Well, I think
interesting.
that leads into the white trend that we had talked about
Yeah.
before. As the fashion becomes a return to white, we will naturally see
Mm,
a platinum taking more share. I
right.
think part of what we were seeing, at least some last year, and I know Platinum Guild is constantly working on it, is training for jewelers to work with the metal that aren't used
Yeah.
to as you do. It takes different training.
Yeah.
Uh, and even designers, out of the US, like getting
Mhm.
them trained with platinum,
Mhm.
which is interesting. Anything to add, ladies, on the cost of the
No, I
metals?
think I think
I
Dave
think you
said it
guys
all.
covered it.
Perfect. Um, Dave, one more question for you. Someone says, I'm sure you'll talk about the efforts made by JPAC on tariffs
Mhm.
and the right, and
Yeah.
you don't say anything about JPAC.
Yeah. So our PAC, the Jewels of America Political Action Committee, we are the PAC to lobby in Washington, and we've been extremely successful in the past years, supported by our members. So in addition to our PAC and our fly-in, and we go talk about all the issues that are important to jewelers every year, several times a year. Beyond tariffs, we talk about crime and other issues, and how to get government to pass legislation to address these things. It's extremely important now more than ever to in your local markets to establish relationships with your local representatives and senators and talk about firsthand. You're the constituent. Like contact your representative and share your concern of tariffs. That when you do that, because you're a voter, they're going to listen. And when we go down and bring 20, 25 jewelers every year down to DC, and I highly encourage you to get involved in the pack if you're not already involved. Um, they listen. It's one thing coming from me as the industry's representative from Jewelers of America talking about the importance of these issues and how to deal with them, but coming from a local jeweler in Connecticut or in Washington State or wherever, it's very important. So I encourage you. It's critical at this time, and I'm not going to do a pitch for the pact and try to impress upon you how important it is for us to raise funds, but it is. You know how Washington works. Most people know it takes us supporting those legislators' campaigns financially in order to get a bigger audience and affect more change. So it is the more money we have in our pack and our war chest, the more effect we can make with legislators. That's just the way Washington works. Um,
Yeah, and
so
I just
so
want to quickly call out Dave in the chat, not in the Q&A section, but in the chat of this webinar. John Bridge actually weighed
mm,
in and said that it's
yeah,
really important for jewelers to establish and maintain a good relationship with their congressional representatives
yep,
and senators. Trade and tariff situation depend on individual involvement. And then he said,
yeah.
speaking back, it's critically important to be involved by donating to the organization. So thank you.
Yeah, so John's a good example of that. John, in his local market over the years, has been very active in politics. He's established tremendous relationships with his local representatives who have leading positions in government on commerce. Maria Cantwell, I mean, some leading individuals that affect change. And he's brought that to the pack. Okay, so that he's made a direct impact. It's one person, but it's a big impact. He can open doors for us to talk to these individuals about how important these issues are to jewelers. And so that's just one example. If we had that times 100, we'd be
Yeah.
bigger than the with whoever the largest pack is in the world right now. I mean, it would be very effective. So it's important.
For
Yeah, and
John, it runs in the family too, because I was interviewing John Kennedy a couple years ago for the interview I did with him when he retired.
Hmm.
He was telling me years ago about Herb Bridge was the one that encouraged him to go down to Washington and lobby about getting law enforcement more involved in
Yeah,
jewelry
yeah,
crime. And this was, I think, the
yeah,
late 90s, and jewelry crime was spiking. And I remember
yeah.
him telling was one of the bridges that was like, no, we're going to go down and do this. We're going to get involved. And it worked.
It's very important. It really is. I can't stress it enough. It's just until you actually go down there and experience it, you kind of some people just kind of brush it off, saying, "What kind of change am I going to make?" But as a constituent and developing relationships, you can make an impact. Um, Bill Farmer, Farmer's Jewelers in Lexington, Kentucky. He comes every year to the fly-in. He talks to Andy Barr. Andy Barr's like, "That's where I buy all my jewelry. Come on, Bill. Let's talk about the issues." I mean, it's real. Andy Barr is like on the banking finance committee and making, he's making decisions on stable coin and different forms of currency. What's fair in credit card reform? Like that's big. So if anybody on this wants to get involved, just feel free to reach out to me. My information's on the website, or Susan Posnock or Amanda or anybody to talk about how you can get involved in the PAC and DC and these meetings. Because if you're interested in it, it makes a difference. That's
And
all I can say.
we do have someone in the chat who's interested, just FYI.
yes,
Yeah,
I
I
see that.
see.
Mark, we'll
Yeah, I see
we'll
Mark. Yep. Yep. Mark, just reach out to us
and
and
you
we
can always
will
email events@jewelers.org. That's the easiest way, and that'll
yeah,
get
events@jewelers.org. Yep.
and we can take care of you. To quickly pivot back to a couple of trends real quick, maybe we can speed round. Somebody asked a question about AI and where we think that AI is going to have an impact on the jewelry industry in 2026. Speed round. Who wants to
If you
tackle?
want me, I just say, you should start using AI for everything from marketing campaigns to strategies to business operations to how to increase your profit margins to, everything. Use it as a tool, use it as a guide, and then, obviously, you add your personal touch. It really accelerates the process in which you can implement change in your business.
I think I just want to add to that too. I think people should look at AI as a tool to help with finish some of the more time-consuming rote tasks, and
Right.
not, I wouldn't let it, take over your business, or,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
still have,
Right.
you still have to look at everything that AI
Yeah.
does. It's not to that point yet where it's foolproof. I don't know,
Right.
honestly, if it'll ever be. And I'm also going
Yeah.
to read this comment out loud because I really enjoyed it. Somebody wrote in the chat, the industry keeps talking about AI driving design requests. AI is simply an image and still needs to be made with CAD CAM or traditional techniques. Trade organizations and publications need to talk more about this and spell out the whole process. Not all pretty pictures are manufacturable, because I'm sure,
Yeah.
people tell ChatGTP to come up with some kind of ring, and then they take it to the jeweler and they're like, oh, I want to make this. It's like,
Yeah.
well, that's not,
Yeah.
ChatGPT doesn't really know the whole process.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
And by the
Yeah.
way,
I think,
all AI is using information that we've put out in the world to
right.
spit
Mhm.
that information back at you.
Yeah.
So it thrives on research and knowledge and information that's already out there, that we, not just us here, but that we as the jewelry industry have put out into the world. So that's a good
Yeah.
thing to keep
Yeah.
in mind.
Yeah, I think to your point, Michelle, it's great for rote tasks, things that are not as fun to do. But I think for creativity, at least in the way that I personally work, I think my best ideas come from my own expertise, from talking to my team, from talking to people who know, rather than AI.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
mean, when you're a writer or designer or anything, your creativity is like a muscle. If you
Sure.
quit
Yeah,
using it,
absolutely.
it'll get weak. Like, you have to be writing all the time and thinking. And people ask me all the time if we ever use AI with articles, and I'm like, absolutely not.
Um,
Um, I just want to say something. I just looked at some of these questions and answers. I don't care. I hope you don't mind me stepping in here.
Mm-mm.
Somebody asked a question. We're talking about manufacturing coming back to the United States, much more than in previous years. And so how do we get high school students interested in vocational training? So that's something that we're working on right now with MJSA, the Manufacturers, Jewelers, Suppliers of America, which now is under the umbrella of JA. They have a mentorship program for bench jewelers, and they have companies that have a real solid mentorship program. They support financially, and they give the student the tools and resources needed to help hone their bench skills. We're working with GIA and their bench program. They've got a robust bench program. Stellar's got a bench conference every year, I think twice a year, that they encourage those interested in bench jewelry to come and get education and training, and then kind of figure out ways to advance that further. So there are a lot of resources for those, and we're working with local high schools too. Annie Dureska in DCA, they're working with local high schools on how to implement curriculums for bench jewelry in high schools. So that's
Right.
all happening right now. It's
The
hard.
NJ's Impact Initiative has also supported the work of BIJC, and they have a program that they've actually started jewelry school at a local high school. So there are a lot of initiatives, and I would say, Jay, who wrote the question, if you want to get involved and support JA and the industry, we can help you make those connections for you.
Yeah. So
Perfect.
it's a good question. Thank you, Jay, for that.
Great question. And unfortunately, that concludes our time together. We are out of time. I think we could stay on all day and keep talking. But I, for one, am very looking forward to a great 2026 with you all and with the industry. And I hope that everyone will continue to find ways to get involved with trade associations like JA. And thank you to the hardworking team at National Jeweler for all of your coverage in 2025. The best in the business for sure.
Aw.
That's nice. We appreciate you very much.
Well, thank
Yeah,
you.
thank
Thank
you.
you, Amanda.
Yes,
Thank
thank you,
you.
guys.
Thanks everyone who joined us today, and thanks to our readers for supporting us. I hope everybody has a great holiday season and a great start to 2026.
Thank you, guys. Have a
Thank you.
great
See you
holiday.
next year.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
guys. Happy holidays.